Estimados seguidores de CNA Video Podcast, esta entrevista está siendo grabada en el marco de Aquaexpo y será transmitida en diferida en los próximos días. Así que muy atentos, tengo el agrado de presentar a la doctora Helen Ann Hamilton. Ella tiene un doctorado en ecología industrial y maestría en ingeniería mecánica. Ella es una destacada científica de la sostenibilidad con 15 años de experiencia en agricultura y evaluación de impacto ambiental. Tiene muchas publicaciones relacionados con revistas científicas, especialmente con la revista Nature. Welcome to SNA Video Podcast, and it's a pleasure to have with us.
Thank you.
What is the carbon footprint and what is the importance right now in the world?
For carbon footprinting.
Yeah.
So as the world becomes warmer and more unstable due to climate change, we have a responsibility as an industry, we have a responsibility as a group of people to protect our future. We want to have a world that is beautiful, nice to live in for the future generations to come, and it's our responsibility to make sure that we do everything it takes to create that. Now, having a carbon footprint and measuring your impacts on the environment is the first step towards making sure that we can reduce our impacts on the environment and leave a better planet for our children.
Nice. Going back to the second step.
Yes.
How can measure carbon footprint and how the reduction could help to the industry?
That's a great question. Measuring our carbon footprint and reducing our carbon footprint is good not only because it's the right thing to do. Of course, we all know the reasons why to do this from an environmental standpoint around, doing the right thing, but it's also important for the industry because of many different reasons. One reason could be, if you show climate leadership in terms of reducing your carbon footprint, this could give you access to green financing, better financing conditions under green loans. That's something that's very attractive right now when interest rates are really high. Another thing that's important in terms of measuring and reducing carbon footprint, the reason to do it, is that it helps us to access markets that are currently not accessible because we haven't told the good stories about Ecuadorian shrimp that we have to tell, and therefore those markets are not open to us. There's markets that really care about this in the world, and by us measuring, documenting the good work that's being done in Ecuador, the more access we have to higher value niche markets.
What are the common challenges that business face when trying to measure and reduce carbon footprint?
I would say that the biggest, so there's many challenges, of course. It's a difficult task to first start understanding the science behind how to measure a carbon footprint, and then it's also difficult to start implementing measures to reduce carbon footprints. But I would say if I could choose the most difficult part of all of it, it's to actually put your money where your mouth is, to put in the investments needed to be able to, let's say, electrify diesel pumps, diesel aerators, to power those diesel aerators, those diesel pumps with something cleaner through the electricity grid. Those require gigantic investments, and I would say that's a big challenge to overcome to try to make improvements in your carbon footprint.
Being different methods to measure the carbon footprint, which one do you think will work better with aquaculture?
Which of different methods to measure carbon footprint?
Yes.
I believe that the best method to use when measuring carbon footprint is life cycle assessment. And that's because it takes a holistic approach. It includes the entire value chain. So you're accounting for the emissions that happen all the way along the production line towards eventually creating your shrimp. So it's all the way up into the raw materials, the feed ingredients that go into the feed recipes, that go into the shrimp, all of the production process, all the emissions related to that are accounted for in this method, all the way down to logistics, distribution, transport, processing, everything is included. So it's a holistic tool that gives us a great overview of what the big drivers are for carbon footprint.
What kind of policies do you think could incentive companies to measure and reduce their carbon footprint?
That's a great question. What we see happening in other parts of the world is that national policies are starting to align with a net zero carbon position. So, for example, in Norway, where I live, and in Europe, all of Europe, all of the EU, we have the obligation under EU law to reduce our carbon footprint, to reduce our impacts on the climate, and reach a net zero position in the future. And this is something that helps to incentivize the industry to comply, because it's just the rules of engagement now. You have to do it to be able to survive.
Which industrial sector produce the largest carbon footprint, and in which position are our industry?
At which position are?
Our industry.
So it depends on how you do the accounting.
Yeah.
Of course, there's many different ways to do the accounting, but I believe the food sector overall represents roughly 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions, if I'm not mistaken. And aquaculture as a whole is just a very small portion of that. That's because aquaculture is compared to beef, compared to chicken, compared to all other different types of protein, it's very small, right? But still, what aquaculture has is we have innovation that can be used in other sectors. We are pioneers environmentally. We see this globally, that we are some of the first movers when it comes to showing climate leadership, environmental leadership that then other sectors can learn from. And this is something I really hope for us.
Even if aquaculture use agricultural products and marine products as well,
Oh yes.
the carbon footprint is lower than other industries?
So it depends, again, it depends on how we look at this and what type of unit we're measuring on,
Yeah.
right? But aquaculture, generally, when we look at a kilogram of produced shrimp, or a kilogram of produced salmon, or tilapia, or trout, sea bass, sea bream, we're seeing that aquaculture species have a very competitive carbon footprint compared to most other animal-based proteins.
Okay.
Maybe the exception to this is chicken.
Yeah.
Okay, but I see when I'm doing my studies, when I'm doing the analyses, our team at Biomar is we have a dedicated group of scientists that work on this, and we see many opportunities for us to become better than almost all animal proteins.
Successful example of carbon footprint reduction has been observing or organization on which tend to have zero food carbon prints. Do you have example of that?
Of a net zero producer of shrimp, or a net producer of fish, or?
In general, in aquaculture.
And do we have an example?
If you have an example, yes.
No,
No.
we do not. No, we do not.
You always find carbon footprint on aquaculture products.
It is
It's
extraordinarily.
difficult to reduce the carbon footprint on aquaculture.
The goal is to reduce the carbon footprint that we have. We want to work towards net zero, but that is a very, very difficult thing to achieve. So I think the idea here is that, we shoot for the moon, and if we land amongst the stars, we're really happy, right? It's about improving what we can, when we can, in the most aggressive way possible. So I really believe that while net zero is a very difficult goal to achieve, it's still nice to have lofty targets, very extraordinary targets that we can work towards. And if we don't make it, that's okay. But at least we're making as much progress as we can.
What advice would you give to companies and organizations that are seriously considering measuring and reducing their carbon footprint?
My best advice to a company that wants to get started in this type of journey, so I have a few things. The first thing is you cannot improve what you do not measure. You have to start measuring, collecting data. Data-driven companies are shown to be much more efficient, much more effective. So the first place to start is just to start measuring. And then once you're doing the measurements by engaging in the right type of people, scientists in this area, doing credible sustainability work, then once we have the overview of the situation, then we can start looking into the drivers, start looking into the causes of the impacts, and then figuring out strategies to make big dramatic reductions in carbon footprint while keeping the company economically viable. We need to find those win-win-win situations.
Do you have an idea how much is the carbon footprint of shrimp production in Ecuador?
Yes. So
Could you tell us something about that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So from the analysis that we've done at Biomar, and granted, we're a feed company, and therefore we have our customers, and so we're clearly working with our customers. So the data that we have is from our customers. So take that into account. But from what I've seen from the customers we've been working with, the data that we have, the carbon footprint of Ecuadorian shrimp is around, on average, 5.2 kilograms of CO2 equivalents per kilogram of shrimp. And this is comparable to about Norwegian salmon. But of course, there's a lot of variability in the different sites, production systems, how intensive the system is, what the aeration system looks like, how electrified the system is. So there's a lot of variability, but on average, we're seeing about 5.2.
What would be your recommendation to our countries to start with?
Yes. My recommendation for getting carbon footprint and climate action within this industry and in developing countries, I would suggest that we start, we can start small. I think education is always a smart way to go about it, where we first try to educate the market, educate the group of producers that we have, and try to get them to understand the importance of this, because I don't know that anyone will take it seriously, or I don't know that anyone will be willing to invest the amount of money it takes without understanding the problem, right? Without understanding why it's important. Of course, I would never do anything that I didn't understand why it was important. I need to be convinced about why it's important first, right? So I always find that that's a good place to start. Of course, that's not a very concrete answer, but I mean, there's small actions that we can take that are not necessarily that costly, just to get going. Just to get going. I think there's a lot of good work being done on, like I mentioned before, on the green financing side, where companies are accessing better loans, different capital options that have better financing terms, so that they can make these bigger investments into sustainable projects, like electrifying, right? And those financing terms are tied to their performance on sustainability. Those options are absolutely available here as they are in other countries.
Do you think carbon footprint will convert market barrier for exporting products?
Oh yeah. I think carbon footprint will be a key differentiator in the market across all different export countries, even including China. Of course, China at the moment is not particularly interested in the carbon footprint of imported shrimp, but that can change very, very quickly. Decisions can get made in China very fast, and suddenly everyone has to comply. But if we're talking about export markets that already today care about carbon footprint, we have many different markets in the US, European markets, and it's about finding a way to tell the good stories, document the good work we're doing here, to access those markets abroad, in those markets, of course, and improve the margin on Ecuadorian shrimp. I think that is absolutely possible today with the right partners working together.
Dear Ann, a final message to the Ecuadorian shrimp farmer, please.
A final message: keep up the good work that you're doing. We're seeing really good things, and I think that it's about just continuing. Sustainability is a journey, so let's go on it together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.